The Unbreakable Bond, Dogs' Love Stories That Will Melt Your Heart, Part 1. 1. A love story for the ages. The sun had just begun to dip beneath the horizon, casting a golden haze over the sleepy town. Somewhere in the quiet suburbs, a boy sat on a porch swing, his fingers tangled in the soft fur of a dog curled up beside him. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. The dog sighed, shifting slightly, pressing his head closer to the boy's knee, as if to say, "I'm here. I always have been." If you've ever loved a dog or been loved by one, you know that there's a certain kind of silence between you that speaks louder than words. It's the kind of silence filled with comfort, understanding, and something deeper than loyalty. It's love in its most honest form. This story isn't just about one boy and his dog. It's about all of us who have felt that connection. The gentle thump of a tail when you walk through the door after a long day. The eyes that follow you not out of curiosity, but devotion. The warmth that curls up beside you when the rest of the world feels cold. It's about the power of a dog's love. Raw, unfiltered, and unconditional. There's something extraordinary about the way dogs love. They don't care about your past, your mistakes, your scars, or how successful you are. They love you because you exist. They love you because you are theirs. And once you've earned a dog's love, it stays with you, not just for their lifetime, but in some strange, soulful way for yours too. That kind of love is transformative. It comforts the broken, it steadies the anxious, it brings light to the grieving and joy to the lonely. It teaches us to slow down, to appreciate a walk through the park, the smell of rain, the simplicity of being in the moment. It teaches us to listen, not just to what's said, but to what's felt. Let me take you back for a moment. A young woman, widowed at just 32, found herself retreating from the world. She didn't speak much anymore. She stopped painting, something she had once loved deeply. Her world had turned grey. And then one day, a friend dropped off a scruffy, trembling puppy with oversized ears and a crooked tail. "He's not much," her friend had said, "but he needs someone, and maybe you do too." She wasn't thrilled at first. The pup cried through the night, chewed her slippers, and left fur on her furniture. But slowly, softly, he found his way in. One morning, he dropped an old paintbrush at her feet, tail wagging expectantly. And for the first time in over a year, she smiled. She picked up that brush, she painted again, and in every stroke was a piece of healing. The dog had no idea he was saving her. He just loved her. That was enough. These stories, these quiet, powerful moments, are not rare. They are happening in small homes, in bustling cities and sleepy towns, in shelters and in nursing homes, in the lives of the lonely, the grieving, the recovering. Dogs are not just pets. They are witnesses to our lives, and sometimes they are the ones who carry us through it. In this video, we'll share true stories that highlight just how powerful a dog's love can be. Stories of loyalty so deep it defies logic, of resilience that overcomes impossible odds, and of joy that lights even the darkest places. These aren't just tales, they are living proof of how dogs with hearts bigger than their bodies can change the course of a life. So whether you've known the touch of a cold nose against your hand during a sad night, or the burst of excitement at the jingle of a leash before a walk, or even if you've only ever dreamed of that kind of companionship, this is for you. Because the love of a dog is not just heartwarming, it's healing, it's inspiring, it's powerful. And once you've truly experienced it, you'll never be the same again. Part 2. Unwavering Loyalty, a True Friend in Need. The wind howled through the narrow alleyway as Marcus stumbled home that night, his shoulders hunched beneath the weight of grief. It had been a year since the accident that took his wife, and it still felt like yesterday. He barely noticed the icy rain or the ache in his chest anymore. He simply moved, step by step, like a man carved out of stone. But there was one soul who noticed, one who never forgot: Shadow. The black and white shepherd mix had been his wife's dog first. She'd rescued him from a shelter 6 years ago, claiming she saw something in his eyes. And she was right. There was a wisdom in Shadow's gaze, an old soul behind that soft, steady stare. After she passed, Shadow had become Marcus's only thread to her memory, and maybe, without realizing it, his anchor to the world. That night, as Marcus opened the creaky front gate and stepped onto the porch, Shadow was already waiting, ears perked and eyes fixed on him. The dog didn't wag his tail like usual. He growled, low and sharp, then took a step forward, pressing his body between Marcus and the door.
"What's wrong, boy?" Marcus muttered, brushing past.
But Shadow lunged, knocking his leg with surprising force. That's when Marcus heard it, just faintly, through the noise of the storm. A rustle, then a click, then silence. He froze. Shadow's body remained still, muscles taut, nose twitching toward the darkness just beyond the hedge. And then it happened. A man leapt out from the shadows, something glinting in his hand. Marcus barely had time to raise his arms when Shadow launched into the air, barking with a ferocity Marcus had never heard. The would-be attacker stumbled, startled, and dropped the knife clattering to the sidewalk. Shadow sank his teeth into the man's sleeve, dragging him down, buying Marcus enough time to run inside and call for help. By the time the police arrived, Shadow was sitting calmly at the gate, chest heaving, watching over Marcus like a soldier standing guard. They later found out the man had been watching the neighborhood for weeks, waiting for someone vulnerable. If Shadow hadn't acted, if he hadn't sensed something Marcus didn't. That night changed everything. Marcus sat on the floor with Shadow, tears spilling freely for the first time in months. He didn't speak, just rested his forehead against the dog's, feeling the warmth, the heartbeat, the silent promise, "I'll protect you, always." Shadow didn't need words, his loyalty had spoken volumes. Stories like Marcus and Shadow's aren't just rare miracles, they're reminders of something we often forget in our busy lives. Dogs love without condition, and they protect without question, not out of duty, but out of something far deeper, connection. There's a reason dogs are entrusted to assist the blind, to calm veterans battling PTSD, or to sit beside children during chemotherapy. They sense our fear, our sadness, our hesitation, and they stand by us anyway, not because they expect something in return, but because loyalty is simply who they are. Think about the last time you felt completely alone. Now imagine a dog curling up beside you, resting their head on your lap, letting you cry into their fur without judgment. That's what they offer, a presence that doesn't try to fix you, only to stay. And in staying, they change you.
At the heart of every dog is a quiet promise about, "I will never leave you, even when you raise your voice, even when the world turns its back, even when you can't get out of bed, even when you feel unlovable." That kind of love, that kind of loyalty, it makes you want to be better, to be gentler, to love harder, to show up the way they always do.
So the next time you see your dog watching you from across the room, tail wagging, eyes full of hope, remember that behind that gaze is a friend who would stand between you and the darkest night, just like Shadow did. Part 3. Resilience and Hope, Overcoming Adversity. There was a time when Olivia didn't believe in second chances. She had just turned 37 when the accident happened, a head-on collision with a drunk driver. The doctors told her she'd walk again, maybe, but nothing would ever be the same. The pain, both physical and emotional, was relentless. She withdrew from the world. Friends stopped calling, family stopped insisting. Her once bright apartment dimmed into silence and routine. The only sound she allowed in was the click of her wheelchair across the hardwood floor. That was before she met Leo. He came from a rescue shelter, a golden retriever, barely a year old, with a twisted back leg that dragged slightly when he walked. Car accident, the shelter staff told her. Lost his owners. He's been through a lot. Olivia stared at the dog behind the metal bars. He didn't bark. He didn't jump. He just sat there, watching her, not with pity, not with sadness, but something gentler, something that felt like understanding. She hadn't meant to adopt him that day, but as she turned to leave, Leo let out a single, quiet whine. Not desperate, not dramatic, just a question, a plea. It was the first time she had felt something stir in her chest in months. The first few weeks were hard. Leo limped everywhere, often falling on the smooth floors. Olivia found herself frustrated at him, at herself, at the cruel twist of fate that had broken both of them. But Leo never gave up. Every morning he would try again, climbing onto the couch, fetching the ball, even if it took 3 tries, dragging himself up the stairs, one clumsy paw at a time, just to sleep at her feet. And one day Olivia noticed something. He wasn't limping as much. She began to research canine physical therapy. She built ramps. She learned how to massage his muscles, encourage balance. She found herself cheering when he took extra steps, laughing when he tripped over the rug, crying quietly when he climbed into her lap on his own for the first time. Somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing herself as broken. Because if Leo could keep trying, why couldn't she? 6 months later, Olivia stood at the edge of a park, hands gripping the handles of her walker. Leo was next to her, wearing a special brace on his hind leg. They looked a bit like a pair of misfits, both scarred, both moving awkwardly, but together they walked, step by step, breath by breath. Children pointed at Leo. "Why does that dog wear a leg brace?" Olivia smiled. "Because he's a warrior," she said, "just like me." Leo didn't just teach her to walk again. He taught her to live again. He reminded her that healing isn't a straight line, that some days hurt more than others, but showing up matters. That progress doesn't always look graceful, that even with scars, especially with scars, there's still room for joy. And in learning how to help Leo heal, Olivia rediscovered the parts of herself that had been buried under grief. Her determination, her compassion, her belief that life could still be beautiful. Resilience isn't just about strength, it's about choosing to keep going when everything in you says stop. It's about falling and getting up again and again, even if no one is watching. And no one embodies that quiet, relentless hope quite like a dog who refuses to give up. If you're caring for a dog with special needs, or if you yourself are facing something that feels insurmountable, remember Leo. Remember the way he dragged himself forward. Remember the way he fell and fell again, but kept trying. Remember the way his love, even in pain, remained whole. And remember this. Sometimes the ones who look the most broken are the ones who hold the most healing. All they need is a chance, and someone who believes in them, just like Olivia did, just like Leo did for her. Part 4. The Power of Play. Finding Joy and Laughter. If you had passed by the Hartley house on a gloomy Tuesday morning, you might not have noticed anything unusual. Just a small house, an overgrown lawn, and an old woman slowly setting a bowl of oatmeal on the table. But if you had lingered a little longer, you might have heard something unexpected. A laugh, light and breathy, as if it had been tucked away for years and was finally allowed to escape. That laugh belonged to Eleanor. She was 82 years old, recently widowed, and had stopped smiling months ago. Her days were spent in silence, her television turned off, her front door unopened. The only sound in her home was the soft ticking of an old grandfather clock. Until Max showed up. He was a foster dog, supposed to stay for a week or two until a permanent home could be found. A scrappy little mutt with one ear that never stood up, mismatched paws, and eyes that practically dared you not to love him. The first day, he peed on her rug. The second day, he chewed the corner of her knitting basket. The third day, he dragged one of her husband's old slippers into the living room and fell asleep with it between his paws. Eleanor tried to stay indifferent. She told the rescue agency she didn't need a project, but Max had a way of poking holes in even the most fortified walls. It was on day 5 that it happened. Eleanor had just poured herself a cup of tea, when Max came skidding into the kitchen, a fuzzy orange ball clenched in his teeth. He dropped it at her feet, looked up, and barked, sharp and expectant. Sharp and...
"Oh no," she said, her voice dry with disuse. We don't do that here."
But he barked again, tail wagging, eyes full of mischief, and almost without thinking she nudged the ball with her cane. He pounced, skidded, missed the ball entirely and bumped into the cabinet, and Eleanor laughed. It startled her. She actually looked around, embarrassed, as if someone might have seen, but Max didn't care. He ran back with the ball, tongue lolling, more excited than ever. They played for 10 minutes that day, then 20 the next. By the end of the week, Max had figured out how to gently toss the ball onto her lap when she sat in her armchair. He'd sit back and wait, ears perked, until she obliged with a slow underhand toss down the hallway. What started as a game became something more. Max woke her up each morning with a toy between his teeth. He nudged her hand when she looked too quiet. He barked at the mailman, then turned proudly to Eleanor as if expecting applause, and every time she smiled, really smiled, he would spin in a circle, tail wagging like a fan blade. Dogs don't just play for fun. They play because it's how they connect. It's how they say, "You matter. You're still part of the world." For Eleanor, play was a door she thought had closed long ago, but Max opened it, slowly, gently, with every goofy tumble and wag of his tail. And through that door came light. There are countless stories like this. Children on the autism spectrum finding peace in rhythmic games of fetch. Veterans with PTSD learning to laugh again through tug-of-war with a service dog. Cancer patients who forget their pain, even for just a moment, as their dogs chase butterflies across the yard. Because dogs don't see pain the way we do. They see presence, they see play, and through them we remember the joy we once thought was lost. The power of play is the power to feel again. To laugh when we thought we never would. To hope when everything felt too heavy. To say, "I'm still here." And to hear, in a bark, a leap, a nudge, "So am I." Eleanor never did give Max back to the shelter. She kept him. And every Tuesday morning now you can still hear her laughing from the porch, the garden, or the living room where Max is almost always chasing that same fuzzy orange ball. Part 5. The enduring legacy of canine love. There's a moment, often quiet and unnoticed, when a dog places their head in your lap, not asking, not demanding, just being. And in that moment you feel something shift, something soften, as if for a little while the weight of the world isn't just yours to carry. That's the power of a dog's love.
Not loud, not flashy, but constant. A love that sits beside you in silence when you grieve, leaps with you in joy when you laugh, and never once asks to be anything other than what it is, pure, unwavering presence.
You've met Marcus and his protector, Shadow, the dog who leapt into the darkness without hesitation to save the only human he called family. You've walked beside Olivia and Leo, two souls once broken, who helped each other find their legs again, both literally and metaphorically. You've smiled with Eleanor and her joyful mutt, Max, who brought back not only laughter, but life itself to a heart that thought it had nothing left to offer. Each story was different. Each dog had a name, a face, a journey, but the thread that ties them all together is the same. Love, loyalty, resilience, joy. Dogs don't ask us to be perfect. They don't care if we're rich or poor, if we've made mistakes or lost our way. They just care that we're there, that we come home, that we hold out our hand, even just once. And in return, they offer everything they have, every heartbeat, every wag, every quiet night spent curled at your feet. They leave paw prints, not just on our floors or our cars or our clothes, but on our hearts. And even after they're gone, those prints remain, reminding us to be brave, to love fiercely, to live honestly. So maybe the real question isn't whether we deserve dogs. Maybe it's how we choose to honor them, by showing up for them when they're old and gray, by choosing adoption, by sharing their stories, by becoming a little more like them, more kind, more loyal, more open to joy. Now it's your turn. Do you have a story of a dog who changed your life, who brought light into your darkness, who made you laugh when you thought you'd forgotten how? We want to hear it. Share it in the comments. Let others feel what you felt. Because in a world that often moves too fast, stories like these remind us to pause, to breathe, to love more fully. And if you don't have a story yet, maybe one is waiting for you at a shelter, behind a fence, or wagging their tail just beyond your front door. This is the legacy of canine love.
Not just the memories we carry, but the lives we choose to live because they were in them. So hug your dog a little tighter tonight, look into their eyes and say, thank you, because they already know, they always do.
The power of a dog's love isn't just a title, it's a truth that lives in every home, every heart, and every story, just like yours.